Hello everyone, Detective Frost here. Welcome back to the True Crime series, The Cold Files. File number 02A, The Prosecutor Who Left One, Hard Drive Missing. Months after Ray Gricar vanished, fishermen pulled his laptop from the Susquehanna River. By then, the water had already done its damage. The machine was broken, corroded, and silent. But the part that mattered most was not simply damaged. It was missing. The hard drive had been removed. The car had been found. His phone had been found. Even the laptop eventually surfaced. But every piece of evidence seemed to arrive incomplete, as if the case was always one step behind the truth it was trying to reach. Ray Frank Gricar was not someone unfamiliar with evidence. He had spent much of his life studying it, questioning it, and building cases around it. As the district attorney of Center County, Pennsylvania, he had served for roughly 2 decades, carrying the weight of public responsibility, legal decisions, and the quiet pressure that comes with a job where every detail can matter. By April of 2005, Ray was 59 years old and nearing retirement. To the people around him, he was private, disciplined, and deeply tied to his work. Some later said he had seemed tired, maybe worn down by the years. But tiredness alone does not explain a disappearance, and it does not explain why a man who knew investigations so well would leave behind a trail that made so little sense. On April 15th, Ray left during what first appeared to be an ordinary day. His car was later found near the Susquehanna River, not far from antique shops he may have had reason to visit. At first, there was just enough normality to keep the situation from feeling impossible. But then came the missing person report. Then the abandoned car. Then the laptop in the river, with its most important piece gone. And from that point on, the question was no longer only where Ray Gricar had gone. It became something colder. What was someone trying to hide, or trying to make everyone believe had been hidden? On the morning of April 15th, 2005, Ray Gricar left work after taking a half-day off. At first, there was nothing about that decision that seemed unusual. Ray was nearing the end of a long career. He had spent years as the district attorney of Center County, Pennsylvania, and by then, retirement was only months away. A quiet drive, a break from the office, even a stop near antique shops would not have looked out of place to people who knew him. Later that morning, around 11:30, Ray called his longtime girlfriend, Patty Fornicola. According to reports, he told her he was driving along Route 192 toward Lewisburg. The call did not sound alarming. There was no clear sign of panic, no obvious warning, nothing that would make Patty believe this was the last confirmed time she would hear from him. But Ray never came home. At first, absence can still look ordinary. A person can be delayed. A phone can die. Plans can change without warning. But as the hours passed, the silence around Ray began to feel different. He was a man with routines, responsibilities, and a life that was not known for sudden disappearances. And after that call, there was no confirmed phone activity, no email activity, no bank activity, and no credit card use. For someone who had built a life around order, the blank space he left behind was difficult to dismiss. The next day, Ray's red Mini Cooper was found in a parking area near the Susquehanna River, roughly 45 miles from his home. It was not hidden in some remote place. It was not found wrecked in a way that clearly explained what had happened. At first glance, the scene looked quiet, but quiet does not always mean simple. Inside the car, investigators found Ray's cell phone. That detail mattered. If Ray had chosen to walk away voluntarily, why leave behind one of the easiest ways to communicate, navigate, or call for help? But if someone else had been involved, why leave the phone in the car at all? There were other details too. The car keys were missing and would not be found. A water bottle reportedly contained Ray's DNA, and there were cigarette ashes in the vehicle, even though Ray was said not to like cigarette smoke. None of these details, alone, solved anything. But together, they made the scene feel slightly wrong, as if the surface was calm while something underneath refused to settle. Near the area where the car was found, there were antique shops. According to some accounts, a shop owner believed Ray may have been there that day, though this was never confirmed with certainty. That possibility made the trip seem, at least at first, less impossible. Ray liked antiques. He may have had a reason to be in Lewisburg. The problem was that a normal reason for being somewhere does not explain why a person vanishes afterward. And then came the laptop. Ray's county-issued laptop had disappeared with him, but the carrying case and power cord were reportedly left behind at home. For months, it was missing. Then, in late July 2005, fishermen found the laptop in the Susquehanna River, lodged near a bridge support. It should have brought the investigation closer to Ray. Instead, it created the question that still hangs over the case. The laptop was badly damaged by water. But the most important part was not just unreadable. It was gone. The hard drive had been removed before the computer was thrown into the river. Someone had separated the machine from its memory. And in this case, memory was exactly what investigators needed. Months later, the hard drive was found on the riverbank. But by then, it was too damaged to recover the information inside. Whatever had been stored there, whatever files, searches, documents, or private traces might have existed, remained out of reach. Then investigators found another troubling detail. According to reports, searches had been made on Ray's home computer for phrases related to destroying a hard drive and water damage to a notebook computer. This did not prove who made those searches. It did not prove why they were made, but it made the laptop harder to explain away, as a random object lost in the confusion. If Ray had left voluntarily, the laptop and hard drive may have been part of a plan. If someone else had harmed him or helped him disappear, the laptop may have been something that person wanted removed. And if someone only wanted the case to look like a secret was being erased, then the missing hard drive created exactly that impression. From that point on, the investigation was no longer just about where Ray went. It was also about what someone may have wanted no one to see. As the case widened, investigators looked at several possibilities. One theory was that Ray had chosen to disappear. Another was that he had been in a personal crisis. Another considered whether someone else may have been involved. But none of these explanations fully answered the evidence. There were also details from Ray's life that drew attention, though they had to be handled carefully. His older brother, Roy Gricar, had also disappeared years earlier, in 1996, under troubling circumstances, and his death was later ruled a suicide. The similarity was often mentioned in coverage of Ray's case, but it did not prove that Ray's disappearance had the same cause. Ray's professional history was also examined. He had been connected to a 1998 decision not to prosecute Jerry Sandusky, a fact that later received public attention. But authorities have said they did not believe Ray's disappearance was connected to his work or to that case. In the end, those details added context, but they did not provide a confirmed answer. What remained was a stack of facts that grew heavier with time. A normal-sounding call, a car near the river, a phone left behind, missing keys, cigarette ashes that did not fit Ray's habits, a laptop found in the water, a hard drive removed, and searches about damaging computer equipment. And still, the simplest question could not be answered. Ray's family and loved ones were left in a place no family should have to remain, between hope, grief, and uncertainty. Patty Fornicola, the person who received his final known call, became one of the most important witnesses to the beginning of the disappearance. His daughter Laura later sought to have him declared legally dead so that legal and financial matters could be resolved. In July 2011, Ray Gricar was declared dead in the eyes of the law. But a legal declaration is not the same as an explanation. Center County lost a longtime district attorney under circumstances that made the community uneasy for years. The case became one of Pennsylvania's most enduring mysteries, partly because of who Ray was. He had spent his career working inside a system built on evidence, timelines, and proof. Yet his own disappearance left behind evidence that was damaged, partial, and strangely resistant to meaning. There were no arrests. There was no trial. No official criminal conclusion closed the case. In the end, the case did not close. It simply became older, and in some ways, more difficult to understand. What makes Ray Gricar's disappearance so difficult to sit with is not the absence of clues. It is the way the clues seem to point in different directions, without ever forming a complete picture. A car near the river suggests one story. A quiet final phone call suggests something ordinary. A missing phone trail suggests a clean break. But the laptop, stripped of its hard drive and damaged beyond recovery, suggests something far more deliberate. Maybe the hard drive held nothing. Maybe it held everything. The problem is, we may never know. And that is where the case becomes especially unsettling. Ray spent decades working in a world where facts were supposed to be gathered, tested, and arranged into meaning. But in his own disappearance, the facts remain scattered. Each one matters, yet none of them fully explains the others. There is no simple villain to name, no confirmed motive, no final scene that brings the story into focus. Only missing keys, missing data, and one missing man. And after all these years, the question is still not only where Ray Gricar went, it is why the evidence he left behind still refuses to fit. Ray Gricar's case leaves behind the feeling of evidence that arrived too damaged to speak clearly. But sometimes, the most painful delay is not in the evidence itself. It is in whether people recognize danger quickly enough. The next story begins on a dark road in Minnesota, with a young man calling his parents for help. And then, in the middle of that call, everything goes silent. File number 02B, the road where everything went silent. For nearly an hour, Brandon Swanson was on the phone with his parents, trying to guide them through the dark. It was after midnight on a rural road in Minnesota, the kind of road where fields stretch out in every direction, and the lights of a nearby town can seem closer than they really are. Brandon's car had become stuck somewhere off the road, but he was alive. He was speaking. He was trying to explain where he was. His parents, Annette and Brian Swanson, were already out looking for him. They drove through the darkness while Brandon stayed on the line, describing what he could see, trying to move toward lights he believed would lead him to help. For a while, the situation must have felt frightening, but still fixable. A lost son, a stuck car, a phone call that kept everyone connected. Then, in the middle of that call, Brandon suddenly cried out, and the line went silent. The next day, searchers found his car on a rural road near Taunton, Minnesota. But Brandon was not there. There was no simple path leading to him, no clear explanation waiting beside the vehicle, and no sign that could easily answer what had happened after the call ended. Brandon was 19 years old, a student at Minnesota West Community and Technical College in Canby. The night before he vanished, he had been with friends after the end of the spring semester. He was not leaving behind a public conflict or a dramatic scene. He was simply a young man trying to get home to Marshall. That is what makes the beginning of this case so painful. Brandon was not unreachable at first. His family could hear him. They were searching for him in real time, and still, somehow, they could not find him. But sometime after midnight, a simple drive home turned into a phone call his parents would replay in their minds for years. In the early hours of May 14, 2008, Brandon Swanson called his parents and told them his car was stuck. He was not calling from home. He was not calling from a parking lot or a busy road. He was somewhere outside Marshall, Minnesota, somewhere rural, somewhere dark, trying to explain his location with the limited landmarks he could see around him. Annette and Brian Swanson did what most parents would do. They got in their vehicle and went looking for him immediately. And while they searched, Brandon stayed on the phone. At first, the situation still seemed like something that could be solved. Brandon was 19, old enough to drive home on his own, but young enough that calling his parents for help felt natural. He had been out with friends after the end of the spring semester, and the drive back to Marshall should not have become anything more than a late-night inconvenience. But the problem was location. Brandon believed he was near Lind, or at least close enough to a familiar area that his parents might be able to find him. He tried to describe what he could see. His parents drove along roads in the darkness, looking for him, expecting at any moment to see the lights of his car or the shape of him walking toward them. But they never saw him, and Brandon never saw them. At some point, Brandon left his stuck car and began walking. He believed he could see lights in the distance, and he seemed to think those lights might lead him toward a town, a home, or someone who could help. The phone call continued as he walked through the dark, his parents still listening, still trying to close the distance between them. This was not a case where someone vanished hours before anyone noticed. Brandon disappeared while help was already on the way. According to many accounts, the call lasted around 47 minutes. Then, suddenly, Brandon exclaimed something in alarm, and the line went silent. There was no goodbye, no explanation, no second call that clarified what had happened. From that moment, no one heard from Brandon again. His parents kept searching that night. By morning, they reported him missing, but because Brandon was 19, the early response was not as urgent as his family believed it needed to be. According to later reporting, part of the problem was the way adult missing persons cases were often viewed at the time. A person over 18 could be seen as someone with the right to leave voluntarily, even when the circumstances suggested danger. But that explanation had one problem. Brandon had not simply gone quiet after leaving home. He had called for help. He had been outside, in the dark, unsure of exactly where he was. His parents had been speaking to him when the call ended, in a way that felt deeply wrong. As investigators and family members began trying to reconstruct what had happened, one important possibility emerged. Brandon may not have been where he thought he was. At first, everyone searched based on the area Brandon believed he was near. But later information suggested his location was different. His vehicle was eventually found on Lincoln Lyon Road near Taunton, Minnesota, abandoned along a rural road. Brandon was not nearby. There was no clear sign showing which direction he had gone after leaving the car. That changed the shape of the case. It was no longer simply a question of why Brandon left his vehicle. It became a question of whether he had ever understood where he was in the first place. In the dark, on unfamiliar rural roads, lights can mislead. Distance can feel shorter than it is. A person can walk toward what looks like safety and still move farther away from the people trying to find him. Searches expanded across fields, roads, ditches, waterways, and rural land. Family, law enforcement, and volunteers looked for any sign that could explain where Brandon had gone after the call ended. But no confirmed answer came. There was no official conclusion that he had been harmed by another person. There was no confirmed finding that he had suffered an accident. There was no final piece of evidence that explained the silence after that last sound on the phone. What is known is that Brandon disappeared after calling his parents for help. His car was found. He was not, and years of searching did not bring him home. But Brandon's case did change something. His parents pushed for a change in the way Minnesota handled missing adult cases. In 2009, the state passed what became known as Brandon's Law. The law required law enforcement to accept missing person reports without delay, including cases involving adults, and to begin a preliminary investigation when the circumstances suggested the person could be in danger. It was a change built from grief, but also from urgency. Brandon's family understood something that should have been clear from the beginning. The first hours matter. And even after the car was found, the most important part of the case remained missing: Brandon himself. Brandon Swanson's disappearance is painful because it happened in the space between connection and silence. His parents were not waiting for morning. They were not unaware that something was wrong. They were already looking for him, listening to his voice, trying to turn a dark road and a confused location into a rescue. A phone call should have narrowed the distance between them. Instead, it became the last confirmed connection anyone had to Brandon. What makes the case linger is how ordinary the beginning was. A young man's car gets stuck. He calls home. His parents come to help. But in the dark, with the wrong location, empty rural roads, and a sudden silence on the line, something that should have been survivable became impossible to understand. Brandon's Law cannot answer what happened to him. It cannot tell his family where he went after leaving the car, or why no search has ever brought him home. But it stands as a quiet admission that the first hours matter, even when the missing person is an adult. The road was found. The car was found, but Brandon Swanson never came home. And maybe that is why this case still stays with people, because help was already on the way, and somehow it still was not enough. Brandon Swanson's case leaves behind the ache of help arriving too late, even while it was already on the way. But another kind of delay can be just as damaging, when early assumptions make danger look ordinary. In Orlando, Florida, a young woman missed work after returning from vacation, and at first, the answer seemed close. Her apartment was there, her routine was there, but Jennifer Kesse was not. File number 02C, the camera that couldn't show his face. The camera saw the person who parked Jennifer Kesse's car. A black Chevrolet Malibu pulled into the Huntington on the Green apartment complex in Orlando, Florida. The driver got out, walked away from the vehicle, and passed in front of a security camera. For a few seconds, the person was right there, moving through the frame, close enough to be recorded, close enough to become the most important image in the case, but not close enough to be known. Frame by frame, the figure walked past a fence, and every time the image should have revealed something useful, the face was blocked. A post, a blur, a fraction of bad timing, the kind of detail that feels almost impossible to accept because the answer seems to be standing in plain sight and still slipping away. That person would become a person of interest. but their identity would remain unknown. Jennifer Kesse was 24 years old, living at the Mosaic at Millennia Apartments in Orlando. She had recently returned from a vacation in St. Croix with her boyfriend and was stepping back into ordinary life. Work, phone calls, routines, the small patterns that make a person's absence immediately noticeable. She was responsible. She stayed in touch with her family. She had a steady job and a life that, from the outside, seemed organized and full of forward motion. On the night of January 23, 2006, Jennifer spoke with her boyfriend on the phone. The next morning, she did not call or text him like she usually did. Her phone went unanswered. Then she did not show up for work. When her family entered her apartment, it looked as though she had been getting ready for the day. A damp towel, clothes laid out, hair and makeup items still visible. Nothing clearly explained why she was gone. In this case, the most important clue was not hidden. It was recorded, and somehow it still was not enough. But on the morning of January 24th, Jennifer's ordinary routine stopped before anyone could see exactly where it broke. On the night of January 23, 2006, Jennifer Kesse was still in contact with the people closest to her. She had recently returned from a trip to St. Croix with her boyfriend, and by all appearances, she was moving back into the normal rhythm of her life in Orlando. Work was waiting, her apartment was there, her routine was there. Nothing about that night clearly announced that something was about to go wrong. But the next morning, the pattern broke. Jennifer's boyfriend did not receive the call or message he was used to getting from her. When he tried to reach her, her phone went to voicemail. At first, that might not seem like enough to prove danger. Phones die. Mornings get busy. People oversleep. A missed call, by itself, can still belong to an ordinary explanation. But Jennifer was not someone who commonly disappeared from her own routine. That same morning, she did not arrive at work, and for the people who knew her, that was difficult to explain away. Jennifer was responsible. She was consistent. If she was going to be late or absent, someone expected to hear from her. When her co-workers could not reach her, they contacted her parents, Drew and Joyce Kesse. From there, concern moved quickly. Drew and Joyce drove from the Tampa area to Orlando to check on their daughter themselves. What they found inside her apartment did not look like someone had planned to vanish. There were no obvious signs of a struggle. The space seemed to hold the remains of a normal work morning interrupted at some point before it could be completed. A damp towel, pajamas on the floor, hair and makeup items still out, clothes on the bed. The kind of small, ordinary details that do not usually matter until the person who left them behind is gone. The apartment did not look chaotic, and somehow, that made the silence around it feel even stranger. Jennifer's car was missing. So were items she would normally take with her. Her keys, her phone, her purse or wallet, her driver's license, and her iPod. According to the FBI's missing person information, multiple personal items were gone from her residence, including phones, keys, her Florida driver's license, and her wallet. At first, someone might have looked at those missing belongings and thought Jennifer had simply left for work. But that explanation had one problem. She never arrived, and there was no clear footage showing exactly when, how, or with whom Jennifer left the Mosaic at Millennia Apartments that morning. That gap became the first empty space in the case. If Jennifer walked out of her apartment to go to work, where did the danger begin? At her door? In the hallway? In the parking area? Or after she had already driven away? For the Kesse family, the first hours were not calm. They called. They searched. They checked hospitals. They looked through the area and began pushing for attention. In later interviews, Drew Kesse said the family felt the initial response from police was not urgent enough, and he recalled being told that Jennifer may have had an argument with her boyfriend and might return. That was the family's account of those early conversations. But what is clear is that they believed critical time was slipping away. Then, 2 days after Jennifer disappeared, the case shifted. Her black Chevrolet Malibu was found at the Huntington on the Green apartment complex, about a mile from where she lived. It had not been driven far. It had not been hidden across the state. It was close enough to feel connected to her normal world, but far enough away to raise a more disturbing question. Who had moved it there? That is when investigators found the footage. A security camera at Huntington on the Green had recorded someone parking Jennifer's car and walking away. It was the kind of clue every missing person case hopes for, until the image itself became the dead end. The footage gave investigators a person to look at, but not a person they could name. The figure moved through the frame, but the video was low quality. As the person walked past a fence or gate, their face was blocked at the exact moments investigators needed most. A few clear frames might have changed the direction of the case. Instead, the camera confirmed that someone had control of Jennifer's car after she disappeared, while still leaving that person almost impossible to identify. That individual became a person of interest, but publicly, they were never named. From that point on, the case was no longer only about where Jennifer went. It was also about who had control of her car after she vanished. Investigators focused on Jennifer's apartment complex and the surrounding area. At the time, the Mosaic at Millennia complex reportedly had ongoing construction or renovation work, with workers and other people moving through the property. Jennifer had told her family before that she felt uncomfortable around some of the men working near the complex. Over time, one major theory became that she may have been targeted near her apartment, possibly by someone who knew her routine. But that remains a theory, not a conclusion. There has never been enough public evidence to identify one person as responsible. And it is important not to turn suspicion into certainty, simply because a theory feels possible. The case is unsettling, partly because several details suggest Jennifer may have encountered danger very close to home, but none of them have closed the gap between possibility and proof. As years passed, the Kesse family kept pushing. They worked with media, hired private investigators, raised awareness, and fought for access to the case files. Eventually, after legal action, the Orlando Police Department turned over a massive amount of material to the family, reportedly around 16,000 pages of documents, along with dozens of hours of video and audio. The case did not disappear with time. It became larger, heavier, and more complicated. In 2022, the Florida Department of Law Enforcement took over the investigation. By later updates, FDLE had reviewed large amounts of evidence, conducted more than 100 interviews, and spent thousands of hours going back through the file. More recently, Jennifer's family has also worked with newer technology, including AI tools, to analyze the case materials and revisit the surveillance footage. One possible direction has involved studying body characteristics of the person in the video, including features like the ear, but no official public identification has been announced. It is a strange kind of hope, returning again and again to the same blurry image, searching for something that technology might finally pull into focus. Jennifer was declared legally dead in 2016, but her case remains unsolved. There has been no public conclusion about exactly where she was taken from, who drove her car, or what happened after the morning of January 24th. What is known is that Jennifer missed work. Her apartment looked as if she had been preparing for a normal day. Her car was found about a mile away, and a person of interest was recorded walking away from it. What remains unknown is almost everything her family needs most. For the public, the footage became a mystery. For her family, it became a door that almost opened and then stayed shut. Jennifer Kesse's case is haunting because it feels like the truth came close to being seen. A camera captured the person who left her car behind, but not the face that could give that person a name. Her apartment suggested a normal morning. Her silence suggested something had gone terribly wrong. Her car was found only a short distance away, yet that short distance opened a gap her family has spent years trying to cross. What makes the case linger is not a lack of information. There is footage. There are records. There are timelines, theories, searches, and years of renewed effort. But none of it has answered the simplest questions. Where did Jennifer's normal morning end? And who walked away from her car? The person in the video remains both real and unreachable, close enough to be studied, too unclear to be known. And until that person is named, Jennifer Kesse's story remains suspended between one ordinary morning and one unanswered frame. Across all three cases, the most disturbing part is not just that someone vanished, it is that each disappearance left something behind. A car, a phone call, a laptop, a piece of footage, and still, those traces could not become answers. Gricar's evidence seemed damaged, removed, or incomplete. Brandon Swanson's final call kept his parents connected to him until the exact moment it did not. Jennifer Kesse's camera footage placed a person in front of the lens, but not clearly enough to give them a name. In each story, the evidence was not absent. It was close. It was visible. It was almost useful. And that almost is what makes these cases so hard to leave behind. Maybe that is why stories like these stay with us. They remind us that danger, does not always announce itself in a way people recognize immediately. Sometimes it hides inside a normal drive home, a quiet morning routine, or an object that should have explained everything, but instead created another question. And when the first hours are uncertain, when assumptions fill the space before facts can, the truth can begin moving farther away. The title of this video asks why these missing people left evidence that made no sense. Maybe the deeper answer is that evidence only helps when it still has context. A car without a person, a call without a location, a video without a face, a hard drive without data. Each one tells us something happened, but not enough to say exactly what. And in that space between proof and uncertainty, families are left waiting for a sentence no investigation has been able to finish. If you want more stories like this, consider subscribing. And as always, thank you for watching.
This file may be closed, but the truth is always out there. What do you think really happened? Let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe to follow the next case. I'm Detective Frost, and this is the Cold Files.